for many people, if they look at their present state and they look back and they say, well, I wish I would have started investing sooner. I wish I would have started exercising sooner. I wish I would have made, this business decision sooner, whatever it is, or putting money away. It's always looking back and saying, I wish I would have started sooner. Like even wherever somebody is today, that works. And yet applying it to the future can sometimes be challenging. Plus, imagine things in society going on saying, well, I don't even know if we'll be here in 20 years. And it's like, why worry about the future? And yet when you get there, your future self, assuming you did make those investments early on, is very grateful for you. So I want to shift that to like thinking in waves, because in the book, you argue there's really 4 key career waves to becoming a recognized expert in your field. And this is like the perfect audience that is interested in how to be an expert in your field. And you say you can't skip any steps. If you could speak to those.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the way, Michael, that this arose, and I ended up writing about the concept of thinking in waves in the long game, is oftentimes in my work doing executive coaching, I would have these conversations with my clients. And, sometimes people would say to me, I feel like I'm in a rut. I feel like I'm working so hard. I'm doing all the things I should be doing, but I'm just not getting anywhere. Like I'm not getting any traction. And so, of course, if you're an executive coach, you want to try to unpack that with people. Like, okay, well, what are you doing? And why isn't the thing that should be getting the result actually getting the result? Like, what's going on here? And what I often realized, not always, but pretty often, is that what was happening is that it's true. People were not wrong. They were working hard. They were, in fact, doing good thing. We're not like watching cat videos and then being mad that they didn't make partner. They were doing good, valuable things. But the problem was that they were not shifting what they were doing. It was almost like we get trapped as humans in this idea of like, oh, well, this has been working. It should keep working. But the truth is we have to be sensitive to context. And we're not an assembly line worker, right? You can't just keep doing the thing, and imagine like, oh yeah, that's exactly what it is. You actually have to do different things at different points. And you have to be smart enough and sensitive enough to know when to shift what you're doing. And so oftentimes what was happening was that folks were not shifting, and therefore they were feeling stuck because they were kind of stuck. So what I identified, and there's plenty of sort of sub-points about all of this, but at a really broad level, when we think about the arc of our careers, there's really 4 key pieces. The first piece, which I think all of us can probably understand and agree on, is what I call the learning wave. And that's when you're starting out, maybe you're a new attorney or you're new at a firm or whatever, and you're just figuring out what's going on, right? You're just taking it all in. You're figuring out, what is this place? How does this place work? Who is everybody? Just kind of getting it down, right? So there is always kind of this orientation process where you have to figure out how this new world works. And then, of course, we hopefully shift, some people don't, but we hopefully shift into the next phase, which is what I call the creating phase, which is, okay, you understand who everybody is and what the deal is. Now you need to start participating. Now you need to start sharing your ideas. You need to start speaking up in meetings. You need to, raise your hand. You need to volunteer. Hey, okay, I'll be on this case. Oh, have you thought about, this point? Whatever it is, but you're beginning to contribute in some way and creating intellectual property, or you're writing something, you're adding to something, you're adding value in a certain way so that you're not just a lump on the wall, And so then that's the creating wave. We also need to make sure that we, at a certain point, are shifting into the connecting mode, because here's the thing, especially when it comes to law firms, in a firm structure, if, let's assume for the sake of argument, you want to make partner. Well, one person doesn't make that decision typically. I mean, I guess it depends on the firm, but in most cases, there are a lot of partners. And if you have a group of, X number of people and 80% of them are like, wait, who is that? Oh, she's been here 7 years. I don't even think I've seen her. What? No, was that her name? Like, this is not going to go well. Right? You need people to know who you are. You need them to know what your contribution is. And even more than that, you need them to feel like, oh my God, we couldn't lose her. We have to make her partner because we don't want any other firm to get her. Right? And so you get that because of connecting mode, where you're building relationships, you're working on different projects, you're volunteering for things, you're meeting people, you're having conversations so that people not only know you, but think positively of you. So you have those things dialed in now, right? You're making a contribution. People know you're making a contribution. And then finally, you're able to get to what I call reaping mode. And reaping mode is actually what a lot of people consider to be the end state, which is, yay, you're respected where you are, right? Maybe you've made partner or whatever your particular goal is. You've landed in a great place. Maybe you're a GC somewhere. Who knows? You're making really good money. Everybody's, like, oh, well, what does he think? Let's ask him. And that is a place that feels extremely satisfying because you worked hard for it, and that's great. But it is also really important to recognize you can't stay in the reaping phase forever, because if you get too fat and too happy and you slack off, whether it's slacking off when it comes to your professional development, if it comes to slacking off in terms of, continuing to build your network and meet new people or whatever, eventually whatever steam got you to where you are is going to run out because the world changes, the world keeps moving forward, and eventually it'll dry up. And so before that happens, you want to enjoy your reaping phase, but you don't want to try to bask in it forever. You need to disrupt yourself, and you need to be willing to go back to the learning phase and to become a student again. And maybe that means, learning about new emerging things. Oh, well, like, what are the legal issues with regard to cryptocurrency, or, whatever the thing is. But it's useful to start asking those questions and to not just stagnate and assume that you can coast forever on your successes. We have to keep learning and growing.
I imagine there's going to be a few people listening to this that are thinking, Dorie, it just never ends, does it? Right? Because I thought once I get to this reaping stage, I finally, after all these years, can not just reward myself in the fruits of my labor, but it is really an infinite game. What type of mindset should we have early on, like just even when they're starting to play the long game, and just realizing that the most successful people, as you said, they enjoy their success, but they recognize when it's time to move on and learn something new and create something new and so on?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question, Michael. And it's true. Especially perhaps coming out of COVID, where people might hear that and be like, oh my God, that sounds so exhausting. Because, we're all a little burned out at this point, frankly. We've had a tough 2 years. But that being said, here's the thing. You've probably heard the saying, which I certainly believe in, which is, we all have problems, but some problems are better than others, right? And so if you are, let's say, a partner that's making $1 million a year plus, and you have widespread professional respect, if you disrupt yourself, I say in air quotes, and work on learning something new, this is actually extremely low risk compared to what life was like when you were 23 years old, right? You can treat it with lightness and with fun, because it is fun, because you're learning something new, you're stretching yourself. But worst case scenario, right? I don't think this actually will happen, but let's say it just goes terribly and, it's a disaster, whatever that means. I don't even know what it means, but, you're learning about something and nobody wants to work with you on your cryptocurrency law, whatever, right? Kind of who cares, right? It's okay, because you already have a great reputation. You already have plenty of money. You're able to treat it as the kind of, hopefully, a kind of joyful learning enterprise. These are pretty light problems. Am I super stressed out that I had a problem with flooding in my bathroom? Yes, I am. Also, if I were in Ukraine right now, I would be so happy if my biggest problem was that my bathroom flooded, right? We have to keep it all in perspective. It should not feel like an exhausting slog until death. That is not the point. The point is, actually, if we keep learning and keep growing, each time around the block, it should get more fun, because we're able to enjoy it with fewer of the intense pressures that perhaps we faced on the initial time when we were first learning or first building those connections.